Welcome to the Canadian Highlander points list update. My name is Benjamin Wheeler. I am a Canadian Highlander Council member, and I'm joined today by a fellow Canadian Highlander Council member, progenitor of the format. You have a mulligan named after you as well, Robin Sorensen. Robin, how are you doing?
It's good to be here, Ben.
Well, it's good to have you here, Robin. Today we're doing something a little different. We are going to be covering changes that are being made to the Canadian Highlander points list.
I know there are many.
There's a couple today, which is one of the reasons why we are doing this, because we believe that it's the best way to relay this information to you. Before we get into the exact changes, though, we got to cover what a points list is. We don't have a ban list for Canadian Highlander, but we have a points list, which can be divided into three primary pillars, all containing some pretty powerful cards over the history of the format. You've got fast mana, so this is going to be stuff like Black Lotus, Moxen, Mana Vault, whatever it may be. We have tutors, which Demonic Tutor, Mystical Tutor. Can you think of any other tutors?
A lot of them are taken off.
Yeah.
But Mystical Tutor,
Gifts Ungiven.
Crop Rotation.
Ooh, there's a lot. In fact, I believe tutors, they make up a bulk of the points list. And then finally, something that doesn't have a little bit of overlap in naming convention. They're pointed for balance reasons. This is stuff like Ancestral Recall. Not exactly
Power
a tutor.
9.
Yeah, Power 9, that kind of stuff. Balance itself is on this list.
Mind Twist. True Name Nemesis.
So that's a rough breakdown of the points list. So how do we get to there, though? Well, we have a council of 5 members in which we discuss cards to be added or removed or modified on our points list to act in the place of a banned list. Now, you've been a counselor on and off for quite some time.
Long time.
Yeah, I also have been on for quite some time, which is probably, again, one of the reasons why we're here. We try to do everything we can to interact with other communities too outside of Victoria, BC, when we're deciding about how we want to make changes to the format. And a lot of these decisions come after a very long period of time in which we deliberate what is the best way to approach these changes. Which brings us to some recent changes in how we as a council also approach the points list. Would you say that 2020 and 2019 have been powerful years for Magic?
I'd like to thank everybody for being here and all you survivors of 2019 Magic. It's glad to know you're still hanging in there.
It's been a real battlefield for better or for worse, which has, I strongly believe it actively has changed how we as a council have to approach addressing certain cards, be it the speed in which cards are addressed by the points list or the style of card that we feel that the points list should intervene and help curve the power level on. Which this kind of ties to a card that comes to mind with very fast or fresh pointing being Spellseeker. Spellseeker is a card from Battle Bond that I believe previously earned the title of one of the fastest cards reach 1 point. And anybody that has some experience with the format or with powerful Magic cards, say in like Vintage Cube or whatever, they'll be familiar with the things that this card can do. So this is like a good example of how in 2020, we can't necessarily take the same amount of time that we would have for pointing something like Spellseeker in 2018. But because we have Spellseeker on the mind, let's talk about the first card that will be changing its points total with this points list update. Time Walk. So Time Walk currently was on the points list, or previously rather, at 6 points. Time Walk will be going up to 7 points. Why are we pointing Time Walk, Robin?
Well, it's one of the original Power 9 cards, and it always fell a point underneath Ancestral and Black Lotus. And one of the reasons why it's getting pointed recently is due to the interaction with Spellseeker itself. And it's just good to see it as more of a combo card and less as of a fair tempo-y card. Tempo has changed as a deck, And it's time we kind of get past the tempo pointing system and go with the broken combo-ness of the card.
The idea that there still exists a fair time walk, and I'm sure a lot of people have attempted to play fair time walks in the past couple of years. Lord knows I have. It's not a realistic way of approaching the card on the points list, right? It's the same instance as why we don't point Demonic Tutor because it finds a land occasionally. We point it because it can find Black Lotus or Yawgmoth's Will.
Yeah, fair time walk is probably about a 6-point card.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel that the pointing of Time Walk up to 7 will affect decks like the Pod decks or the Spellseeker Ephemerate combo decks?
I think it makes it interesting, and that's one of the most important things. Is it becomes interesting. Their points are completely wrapped up in Time Walk, Spellseeker, Birthing Pod, and that's a steep price to pay for the combo. Is it too much? I don't know. That's where it gets interesting.
I
think all their points. That's a big deal.
I think it's important that when you're looking at decks like that as well, that we always try to provide like other options with the format. When a deck gets way too focused on doing one thing over and over again, then you run into issues where it's maybe too consistent, which is where putting Time Walk up to 7 ideally manages that better than any other option that we had. The second, third, and fourth cards that are going to be added to the points list, or rather increased, with a couple of them being added, they're all packaged together because this section looks to achieve a similar results from these points. So we have Yawgmoth's Will going up from 1 point to 2 points. We have a new addition in the form of Underworld Breach going up to 1 point. And then another new addition of Wishclaw Talisman also going up to 1 point. Now, you and I we've cast a Black Lotus once or twice. We tend to enjoy playing Storm variants. Why are there 2 Storm players on a council pointing out all these Storm cards?
Well, it's good to keep it honest, keep it honest and fair. There's Yawgmoth's Will is one of the best cards in the game, if not the best card in the game.
Pound for pound.
And I think it's pretty underhand. It's an underhand pointing it to 2.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, if it was a pitch, it would be an underhand pitch.
I see.
And it's easy to knock it out of the park.
Yeah, it's Storm and Storm offshoots have been pretty powerful throughout the history of our format. And I think with the cards like Wishclaw Talisman and Underworld Breach coming out at such rapid succession, it's difficult to basically sit on these cards, right? Like, we take a lot of time when we make changes like this, but Underworld Breach has been out for just over a month now, and it was pretty quickly identified as extremely broken.
Yeah, it feels like a lot longer.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's not quite Yawgmoth's Will, but even a slightly worse impression of Yawgmoth's Will is still enough to cause a pretty dramatic shift in what people are playing and what people care about.
It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it's sure is a heck of a card. And then Wishclaw Talisman is kind of another one here. It fills, again, it's an additional tutor, which it shelves into Storm decks, into Flash Hulk decks, into Time Vault decks, Eggs decks as well. There are certain lists that can take advantage of the untap interactions a bit better than others, but it's... How do you feel about a card like Wishclaw Talisman in Storm or in Time Vault?
It's pretty good in Storm. You can just throw it out there, and then it's a 1 mana tutor on the turn you plan to win. Kind of similar in Time Vault. I played it in lands recently.
That's worrying.
It's pretty good. You can get your fast bond combo. I would often activate it and then play Oko after and turn it into an elk.
Also not bad.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah, it's interesting. The other guy doesn't get to activate it very much.
Your opponent is not... Yeah, let's not get it twisted. The last line of text on this card is never... Or sorry, the second to last line on this card is never really going to be relevant. So Storm's taking a pretty large hit combo as well, but I think that's fine. That's good. It's great. I look forward to playing combo without feeling like I get to free roll some extra points.
It's probably still one of the best decks by far.
Now, this is the last addition or card getting an increase in points. This is a bit of a throwback because there was a time in which this card was already on the points list.
It's been a while.
We would like to welcome back to the fold Price of Progress.
Second red card.
Yeah, going from 0 to 1 point. We have 2 red cards on the points list now. That's impressive. The last time I think we had that was when Price was originally on the points list and Gamble.
Goblin Recruiter.
Okay, yeah, okay. There was dark days. But I think the difference between Price and those cards is that, well, we need to hold red accountable, right? You were pretty passionate in pushing Price.
Yeah, I was kind of leading the charge on Price to 1. It's a pretty minute change. I don't think it affects that much. But my reasoning was every color gets their best cards pointed. Blue gets their recalls, their mana drains. Green gets the crop rotations. Black gets the tutors.
Yeah.
Even white gets their balances. The odd
Yeah.
card. And red just kind of skirted around that.
Which is odd considering how mono red deck wins, or even stuff like medium red is, I mean, they're some of the most powerful strategies available in the format. Like, I don't think many people will debate that mono red is in the top 3 decks available at any given time.
Mono red's always a tier 1 deck.
Yeah.
And I believe in Victoria, mono red and medium red variants had the most wins over every other deck type last year.
And it was not close.
Yeah, it was close.
The thing about Price too, because you mentioned it's not a massive change, but that's also fine, right? Like, not every change we're making to the points list, we're never looking to remove a deck entirely. We're never looking to completely push a deck out of playability. But the pointing on Price of Progress allows for a little more elegance in the building of mono red, be it a point spread of Ruby plus Black Lotus. Now you have to make the choice, the wider spread that includes Strip Mine or Mana Crypt.
Yeah, they get to play the format.
Yeah, exactly. They have to play by the same rules that
all the other colors do. And last I checked, the best spread that I liked the most and some of the other mono red players liked was Black Lotus, Mox Ruby.
Yeah.
As the best mono red spread.
Yeah.
And they're pretty much free rolling Black Lotus,
which is not a sentence that's indicative of a healthy point spread.
Not really, unless you count Storm.
Yeah. That's a whole different story. Yeah. And then lastly, we have the only card that is being decreased and removed from the points list. This was a slow burn of, God, it feels like we've been talking about this for 2 years. Stoneforge Mystic is being removed from 1 point down to the now 0 points. Your Stoneforges are free. Why is this happening? And why did it take so long for this to happen? I say, having said no to this change for so many years.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of new equipment coming out.
All right,
that
fair.
was really nuts. The new swords and stuff came out. And we didn't want to hurt control so bad because this card's a house against control.
Mm-hmm. Control can even use this card occasionally.
With GTA being 2 points and not really looking to go to 1 in the near future, I think it's safe for this card to be 0 points. You can put a Batter Skull in your deck, but it's then you're playing a 5-drop in your deck that you may draw before you get the Stoneforge Mystic.
Then you're playing Batter Skull on your deck.
Batter Skull. You can have some swords. That's fine.
I was thinking about this card a lot too, because again, I was pretty against it for some time until about 4-ish months ago, where mid-range and board-based decks have received a lot of good cards in the past couple of years. Oko, Teferi, Brazen Borrower, that kind of stuff. But the best decks utilizing those cards were never board-based decks. They were combo decks or control decks with Blood Moon, whatever it may be. But I think Stoneforge fits that niche to actually help out those decks pretty efficiently. And again, there is a real cost of including it.
Absolutely. It's not a 1-card include. It requires, at least a Sword of Fire and Ice, at least a Batter Skull, at least some other equipment. And that's a dedication of a number of slots.
There you go. So those are the points changes. Time Walk, up to 7 points. Underworld Breach, 1 point. Wish Claw Talisman, 1 point. Yawgmoth's Will, 2 points. Price of Progress, 1 point, and Stoneforge a big fat 0. Thank you for joining me today to do this, Robin.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed the way in which we relay these changes to you. If you have any comments about this changes or discussion, feel free to leave it below or keep it to the appropriate Canadian Highlander groups. I've been Ben. This has been Robin. Thank you very much. Have a happy Highlandering.
It's been a blast.
Bye-bye.